Bitcoin's alive, what you gon' do? Mempool fees are high. Ordinal. Where does it stop? Nobody knows. It's a revolution. Ay, Bitcoin is the one, no substitution. Ay, with Shizzy and your Gobi, it's Ordinal Revolution.
Welcome back to Ordinal Revolution. My name is Shizzy. On this channel, we cover the entire Bitcoin Ordinal ecosystems. What's up, guys? We have an amazing show for you guys today. So we have the legendary Bob Bodily on the show today. We had him on before. So it's his second appearance. We're going to get into so much. He's really open to talking about absolutely everything. And we're going to try to get as much out of him as possible because he's one of the brightest minds in the space. Anytime something big happens, I immediately go to his page, and 90% of the time there's a tweet or a tweet thread about what's going on. He's really on top of things, and we thought it was really smart to have him on. So without further ado, let's get things started. I'm bringing my partner here as always, Mr. Iago B. What's up, buddy?
What is going on, man?
Yeah, so we've been excited for this ever since we booked him. For people that don't know, who is Bob Bodily?
Yeah, Bob has been in the space since the beginning in terms of the Ordinals. From what I mean, he was obviously there before us. And when we had a conversation with him, that January, February mark, probably before that. But has always been, from what I remember throughout the whole time, from hearing about him and having him on the show and stuff, he's always been a forward thinker in terms of innovation. How can we make this better, this user experience better? And so always appreciate his perspective on, like you said, changes with innovation in our space and things like that. So I highly recommend you give him a follow, and we'll put his Twitter handle in the show notes for you guys.
Yep. Yeah. So let's get things started. We have a lot to go over and a lot to talk about. So let's bring him in. Bob, welcome back to Ordinal Revolution.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here again. Can't imagine a better place to be than chatting with Shizzy and Yagobi.
Appreciate that.
Awesome.
All right.
So I guess we'll start off where we kind of talked about last time. Last time we talked about your amazing platform on ICP, Bioniq. Kind of give us maybe some news on that or anything you got.
Yeah, the best way to think about Bioniq is as an omni-chain Bitcoin NFT marketplace. So what that means is you can currently we have really good ordinal support. So you can essentially bridge ordinals into Bioniq. You can also take Bitcoin and bridge it into Bioniq, and then you can transact at the speed and cost of Bioniq rather than the speed and cost of Bitcoin. So, really, really fast transactions, fast finality. It also opens up some interesting interoperability ideas where we could do, you could do a launch and you could pay runes to purchase an ordinal, for example. And it's relatively easy to make that happen. We haven't done that quite yet. Still kind of finalizing things on the runes bridging side, but really excited about all the kind of omni-chain infrastructure we're building over on the Bioniq side. And we have a couple interesting projects that we've launched. One of them is the Motoko Sentinels. I don't know if either of you have seen the Motoko Sentinels, but it's a recursive. We used our recursive standard called BitGen. Essentially you inscribe all the layers to Bitcoin, and then you have a JavaScript file that goes and pulls all the layers in as needed. There are a couple standards out there that do this, but you basically reduce your costs to inscribe like 20x, because you're only inscribing the layers, not all of the ordinals in the collection. So we have this really nice, it's like a 3D Motoko character, and then we actually built in some dynamic functionality directly to the collection. So you can stake it, you can send it on missions, and you earn XP. It's just experience, and you level up your Motoko and earn additional layers on top of your ordinal, and then you can inscribe it. And so we have kind of phase 2 of that specific game coming out here in the next couple months.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. So you described, Bioniq as an omni-chain BTC NFT marketplace. I believe I've heard you say it's kind of like a layer 2 approach as well to Bitcoin. Is that correct?
Yeah. So technically built on ICP, which is a Bitcoin side chain. So it's not an L2. We don't really have any true L2s on Bitcoin. Except maybe Lightning and
Lightning,
maybe
yeah.
Mercury. Mercury is a state chain that's proactively non-custodial, so you could argue for state chains as well in the L2 camp. But yeah, Bioniq is basically the closest thing we have to an Ordinals L2 marketplace. Faster transactions, more programmability. You can do a little bit more. It sure takes a lot of tech to build L2 Ordinals marketplace in a good way. Way more than I thought. So, we've been going hard since February of 23, and we still don't have like OpenSea feature parity. We're getting really close. Like the next month or two is going to be pretty big for us. But it's just really hard to build on Bitcoin.
Yeah. And that's going to be my question for you in a second in terms of how far we've come. But really quick, you mentioned that there's only 2 possible technical L2s. How do you determine what's a technical L2? Do you go based off on if it uses Bitcoin script, or is there other metric or variables that you look at?
The easiest way is so with an L2, you're basically depositing your Bitcoin in another layer, and then you are minting a faster version of Bitcoin to use. And so the best way to describe an L2 is, can this other layer freeze your funds? Meaning, can they stop you from getting your Bitcoin back to layer 1? That's the first parameter. The second one is, can they steal your funds? So, I guess
someone celebrated the fact that you said steal. Like,
are there like other things I can do here? So can they freeze your funds? Can they steal your funds? And so in the case of, let's look at WBTC, for example, that's the wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum. Yeah. The most successful wrapped Bitcoin in existence, over $9 billion in wrapped in WBTC. That is a multi-sig. So you have, I can't remember how many, it was like 15 people in a multi-sig. Can they freeze your funds? Yes, they could collude to freeze your funds. Can they steal your funds? Yes, they could collude to steal your funds. Maybe there's like
every time you say that word,
there's like a piece or a birthday or something. So Ethereum is not a Bitcoin L2 in its current state, because in the Bitcoin bridge they can freeze and steal your funds. So that's the easiest way.
Well,
to...
that's so crazy to me, because like, yeah, you're right. Wrapped Bitcoin, I think, is the second most liquid token in Ethereum's on Ethereum ERC20. But you don't hear a bunch of people like raising hell about it each and every day. They're using a multi-sig. Yeah, they use like 15 different validators. Is that how it works for the multi-sig? And then you hear a bunch of people bitching and complaining about like a sidechain using multi-sig approach. There's $9 billion in one token being used this entire time on the EVM platform. Why are they complaining about this and not that?
Probably the test of time, right? It's been around for years and years now.
Yeah. Also, there is a higher standard. But the higher standard is hard. Even on Ethereum, you could argue the L2s on Ethereum, they're closer to being L2s. They have a path to being an L2, but for the most part, they're not really true L2s yet. And so even in other ecosystems, we're all striving for these trustless programmatic extensions to your base chain, kind of in a modularity thesis fashion. That's just really hard to do. So I think oftentimes people get caught up in this vision, this dream of like, we need to make everything perfect. When you look at WBTC, and maybe trusted multi-sig is enough for a lot of people. So
yeah, interesting. Okay, well, let's move it over here then. Since you've been in the space, like I mentioned, you focus a lot on innovation and pushing this space forward, which we all appreciate, that you do. But if you could summarize like where we were and where we are today, and if you feel like, I guess, like your opinion on the advancements of where we are right now.
Yeah. Thinking back 2017 to 2022, Udi calls it the great stagnation on Bitcoin. Not a lot of progress, not a lot of people thinking about how to grow Bitcoin. And then, January 2023 comes around, Casey releases the 0.4.0 Ordinals protocol, and it's like you lit a match in a field of dry wheat or something, and it just took off. It was just 2 weeks into Ordinals when I was convinced that this was going to change things on Bitcoin forever.
2 weeks.
I mean, it sounds crazy to say that in 2 weeks, but in 2 weeks we already had high value collections. We had big name traders putting in big money, and you have. I mean, it's so easy to sell. Like, think about Ethereum market cap. Think about the NFT market cap on Ethereum. Think about the fungible token market cap on Ethereum, and then just draw lines over to Bitcoin with the Bitcoin market cap. It's so easy to, from a market size perspective, but also, I mean, Bitcoin is the most decentralized, proof of work, censorship resistant blockchain on planet Earth, and so it's a really easy sell for people to come and want to do things on Bitcoin. In fact, you almost have a lot of people came into crypto because of Bitcoin and then realized you couldn't really build on it, and then went out to a whole bunch of other chains. And then once they figured out you could do things on Bitcoin again, like, everyone is like coming home to the mother chain or the grandfather chain, or whatever Bitcoin is to everyone. So now, I mean, we have, I think last time I checked, Ordinals, BRC20, and Runes each had over $1 billion market cap. Collective. So Ordinals is over $1 billion, Runes is over $1 billion, BRC20 is over $1 billion. And the fact that we have $3 billion plus protocols on Bitcoin in the last 18 months is insane. The amount of builders we're seeing, the amount of VC interest. I've seen VCs that have never had a Bitcoin thesis. Now they have a Bitcoin thesis. People building L2s, trying to extend the base layer, trying to upgrade the base layer. I mean, it's like the Bitcoin renaissance is real.
Yeah,
that's
100%.
awesome. So we were kind of talking before this about something you're building, but previously, about a couple weeks ago, me and Yago, even probably a month ago at this point, I'm big into Polkadot. Before I came to Ordinals, I was a big DeFi guy, and so I was playing over there with Moonbeam and now Hydration. But Polkadot, this stands as this layer 0, and it has all these L1s on top of it. We had the idea that Bitcoin was this layer 0, and all these meta protocols were kind of like the L1s. Is that something that you kind of see? And then maybe you can get into something you're building.
Yeah, the way that I view Bitcoin is in layers. Bitcoin is kind of a lot of people view it as a store of value. That's the most common. And then a lot of people view it as medium of exchange as well. Although that payments use case, it's hard to argue on the Bitcoin case, even on the Lightning case. I mean, I think it makes sense, but it doesn't always make sense. And then we've started to view Bitcoin as the world's most decentralized database. Which Bitcoin maxis would hate because they think that's outside of the scope of what Bitcoin's trying to do. But clearly not. I mean, in the last 18 months, look at all of the interest in treating Bitcoin as a decentralized database, as a layer 1, as a settlement layer for other solutions. And so when I think about Bitcoin, I think of Bitcoin as the settlement layer, and then I think of a host of layers on top of it. You have meta protocols. These are Ordinals, BRC20, CBRC20, Runes, BRC100, even things like Counterparty and Stamps, or things like RGB. All of these are meta protocols on Bitcoin. So that's one type of layer, and it has different trade-offs. You have different trust assumptions. You enable different functionality. Then you have side chains. Side chains are another really interesting one. Things like Liquid or Rootstock. Or you could maybe expand that into other things like Stacks, or even Ethereum or Cosmos or Polkadot or ICP. And sidechains are really interesting. It's a different kind of model. You have different trust assumptions. You have different benefits. And then you have things like L2s. Maybe we put Lightning and Mercury, in that box, and then you have people trying to progressively build toward being an L2. People like Citria. I don't know if it's Citrea or if it's Citria, but
I'm not sure.
whatever it is, or things like you have like the B squared and the Merlin and the BitLayer and the Bob, and all of those trying to be a trustless layer 2 on top of Bitcoin L1. And so that's kind of how I view the space. You have Bitcoin, and then you have, we probably have 50 to 100 layers building on top of Bitcoin, all in their own unique way, making different trade-offs, trying to expand what we can do on Bitcoin. I think everyone wants to do more on Bitcoin.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Interesting.
It makes sense. The biggest reason that we started that conversation was because I've always been behind the theory that we'll have multi-meta protocol ecosystem over here until the opcodes get adopted to core to make it maybe one strong standard in terms of fungible tokens and stuff like that. So how do you view the future for meta protocols? Do you feel like, there will be one winner that comes out on top and the other will die? Because that theory is very popular, but I think it's a very Ethereum type of mindset. Well, they had smart contracts, so it was easy for them to do that, right? But for us, we're limited by Bitcoin's limitations. So what's your perception on the future of meta protocols here?
I always love to go to the XKCD comic. I don't know if you've seen this one. It says, situation, there are 14 competing standards. And so then it pivots to the next panel, and there are two people talking. 14, that's ridiculous. We need to develop one universal standard that covers everyone's use cases. And the other person's like, yeah. And then in the next panel, it says, situation, there are 15 competing standards.
I love that.
It's funny how often I reference that working in the Bitcoin space, because it's so true. Just trying to, I don't know, just trying to solve the problem. You end up just creating yet another standard, and this results in liquidity fragmentation and user fragmentation in crypto. We're seeing it broadly across L1s. Then specifically, we're seeing it within the Ethereum ecosystem with L2s across like Arbitrum, Optimism, Base, ZK Sync, Blast. We're seeing it we're already seeing it in the Bitcoin ecosystem. I could probably list 50 different layers building on Bitcoin, making different kinds of trade-offs. And so I think we're already seeing lots of user fragmentation, liquidity fragmentation on Bitcoin. And in the future, I don't actually expect us to find one layer to rule them all. Maybe, but it feels more likely that different layers that take different trade-offs will be able to do different things in different ways. Some will be good for ABC, some will be good for DEF, some will be good for XYZ. And if you try to do it all, you might just not get traction because you might not do it as well as any of those three specifically. And so my one vision for the future is we need better cross-chain, omni-chain, interoperability infrastructure in order to try to kind of bring things together. And so that's something that I'm really excited about right now.
So let's kind of jump into OPCAT a little bit. So does OPCAT solve a lot of these problems, or is this just kind of what we're hoping it does?
The problem that CAT solves is it makes Bitcoin more expressive in the script layer. So you can actually do more on Bitcoin L1. Yeah, more expressiveness on the base layer. So essentially anyone building on Bitcoin, CAT is good. CAT is good for everyone. CAT helps builders build better tech on Bitcoin. I don't see any reason that we shouldn't upgrade Bitcoin this year with CAT.
Really?
It enables covenants. If you're not familiar with covenants, you can restrict where Bitcoin can be sent. So the reason covenants are really nice is you can do a whole bunch of different tricks to just build better solutions on Bitcoin L1. So one of those is Cat VM. Cat VM actually gives you like optimistic rollups on Bitcoin. So you get this kind of trust minimized bridging. I don't think it might be trustless in the optimistic case. But on top of covenants, you also get vaults. I don't know if you're familiar with vaults, but basically you can specify, I have this vault, I put my Bitcoin in the vault, and I can only send this Bitcoin to another address that I control. So even if someone hacks your vault, they can't do anything. All they can do is send you your own Bitcoin. And so vaults are great. Cat VM is great. Covenants are great, enable a lot of functionality. And so Cat is a really small upgrade, just 10 lines of code. It used to be in Bitcoin already. We would just be re-adding it. And it helps everyone. Cat is good for everyone. People building BitVM, Cat makes it better. People building rollups, you get better bridging with Cat. People doing DLCs, you get better DLCs with Cat. People building meta protocols, you can do more interesting meta protocol trading transactions using Cat. So it's good for everyone.
It creates the L2 issue, right? So technically, you said earlier that Ethereum doesn't have real L2s. Adding Cat, will that give us that real L2?
It will be a massive step in the right direction. There are still some things you have to solve to like remove all trust assumptions from a layer 2. But that's, Cat gets us most of the way there. Cat plus, maybe we take some BitVM2 type stuff, maybe we do some Cat VM type stuff, but combine it all and you can get pretty close to an L2, much better than what we have right now.
Why did Satoshi take it out in the first place?
Yeah, so there were some risks of, I think it was DDoS attacks, where you could like chain things together in a way that would make transactions harder to execute. It would essentially put too much load on the network. Now we have script limits that essentially mitigates any of those concerns.
Okay, that was my next question, but awesome. Okay, so it's not an issue. Like, let's just say someone like Larry Fink, he's putting a lot of money into Bitcoin. His people are putting a lot of money in Bitcoin. Would he be okay, you think, with these changes? Like, obviously, he's probably has stake in some of the miners who control the hash power, who control the Bitcoin network. Do you think if this can kind of get past him in a way?
Yeah. So there was a challenge. So the author of the Cat Bit proposal was Ethan Heelman, I believe. I believe that's his name. Sorry if I messed up the last name. He put out a challenge in 2019, and he said Cat is a harmless upgrade to Bitcoin, essentially. And a lot of people thought it would introduce all of these new attack vectors. So he said, if anyone can find a viable attack vector that is not possible now that Cat introduces, I'll buy them. Buy him a drink at this upcoming Bitcoin conference. And there were a lot of people that essentially tried, but no one could find a viable attack vector. And others have tried, and there really aren't many viable arguments for why Cat is bad. There are, from my perspective, and this is something that Eric Wall has talked about. He did a blog post. It's probably about a couple of weeks ago now, but he talked about MEV. And specifically Meevil, so evil MEV, and he talked about in his blog post that as you add more expressiveness to the base layer, you increase the chance of having bad MEV for Bitcoin miners. The risk there is you're now giving a perverse incentive for miners to reorder transactions in a block, and so you get centralization force on Bitcoin because of this MEV. Eric finishes his blog post by saying Cat actually enables enough expressibility or expressiveness on the base layer that you can isolate a lot of that MEV to layer 2s. So you don't actually, with the type of layer 2s you get with Cat, all of the MEV happens on the layer 2, and you don't actually get it at all on the base layer. So, that's the closest thing that I've seen to a viable attack vector, and it's kind of just a broad one that as we add new functionality to Bitcoin, we could get bad MEV, but it's expressive enough that it likely wouldn't happen anyway with CAT.
Wasn't that part of his argument for CAT versus CTV?
I think the CAT versus CTV argument is that CAT has much more support, much broader support.
Easier to get through.
Easier to get through. It's just so simple. The new attack surfaces introduced is close to zero. It already was in Bitcoin. It's a very small change. It's just a simple, concatenation of elements on the stack. And it's good for a lot of people in a lot of places. Lots of people trying to do things on Bitcoin would benefit from CAT. So CAT is a bit more general purpose and is a bit less use case specific. So CTV is a better implementation of covenants for sure. I think Rindall's Rindall at Taproot Wizards, I think when he built a covenant, he had to use CAT 22 times to make the covenant. And CTV was a single line, just a single line to do a covenant with CTV. But the downside of CTV is you don't have, it doesn't apply as broadly as CAT. CAT is more like a lower level, just concatenation of elements on the stack. So it applies in lots of different places, and a lot of people like that. So I think they, Taproot Wizards is pushing on CAT rather than CTV because they think it has the greatest chance to get into Bitcoin this year.
So to that there, so it took Taproot a really long time, even after it was passed, to kind of get in, like, put on, right? It got hard forked, right? So do you think, so two questions here, do you think it'll take CAT as long as it took Taproot to actually have the fork happen? And if the fork does happen, can do you think it's possible for, let's just say, the maxis to say no, we don't want that, we're going this way, and kind of split Bitcoin again, like it did with Bitcoin Cash?
Yeah, I mean, that would be a hard fork. You don't need to do a hard fork. You only have to do a soft fork to get CAT added to Bitcoin. So it's called a user activated soft fork. Essentially, you just tell everyone, hey, coming up in October or November, I don't know what day Udi is going to pick. This is just speculation from the opinion of Bob right now. But if I were going to do it, I don't know, pick a day coming up in October, November, December, and you tell all the miners, hey, we're going to do this. We have a new version of the, Bitcoin Core. This is what it is. This is why it's awesome. And we're all going to shift to this version on this day. And then users running full nodes can also say, hey, we're all going to upgrade, and it's going to be awesome. And here's what we're going to do. And then you have a big CAT day, and everyone upgrades, and then that's it. It's over. Like there's your user activated fork. And so
I was thinking, I'm sorry.
So it's not crazy to think that we might get CAT this year. Udi has been saying 100% we're going to get CAT on Bitcoin this year. And that's true Udi fashion. At the same time, I mean, it feels crazy because it's really fast for an upgrade. At the same time, betting against Udi doesn't feel like the most the best thing that you could do. He just knows the Bitcoin space so well. I mean, the way he trolls the maxis, his presence on Twitter, like he understands the space better than probably almost anyone. I talked to Jeremy Rubin. Jeremy Rubin is the main developer behind CTV. And I asked him the likelihood of CAT getting into Bitcoin this year. And he said 3%. And then every subsequent year, there would be another 3%, but it's not cumulative, it's independent. So over the next decade, he gave it if you can't multiply the probabilities, you can do 1 minus the probability and then multiply them all to get but it's a 25% chance of getting CAT in the next 10 years. That was Rubin's response. So that's like two wildly different responses on each end of the spectrum. So honestly, I mean, no idea what's going to happen. I'm fairly optimistic though.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, the one thing it wouldn't solve would be transaction speed on Bitcoin, right? Like it would still be 10-minute
So
blocks, and so you'd have to wait for, yeah, you might have AMM capabilities or this computational features on Bitcoin, but it still would be like a slow process.
yeah, I would say yes. That is correct. You're still going to have 10-minute blocks. You're not increasing the block size. You're not increasing the throughput of Bitcoin directly. But I would put an asterisk on that because with rollups, you don't actually put full transactions on Bitcoin. You
Yeah,
put like compressed transactions on
yeah,
Bitcoin. So
makes
take
sense.
all of your transactions, make them really, really compressed, and then have a proof, and you stick that on Bitcoin. So you do get like a 20x improvement. I think it's 20 to 40x improvement in throughput, as well as a 20 to 40x decrease in cost. So what you pay $20 for now might be $1 on a Bitcoin L2 that essentially rolls up your transactions and posts them all together on Bitcoin. So you
Yeah,
do get scale. 20 to 40x is basically what you get for a roll up that uses Bitcoin as a full data availability layer. That's like your max threshold. You can't go more than that unless you start making trade-offs. And there are a million trade-offs that people are trying right now that we can talk about if you want, but we don't have to dive into that.
yeah.
Um,
Go ahead.
I just have a question real quick, and you probably answered pretty quickly. But like, so these L2s that are building right now, like you said, Merlin and you said ICP is kind of like a layer 2 on Bitcoin, which is pretty cool. But like all these,
Side chain, but yeah, kind of,
well, that's what I'm saying.
kind of,
Well, so for
yeah.
these side chains, how easy after OPCAT gets put in, like Udi thinks it will, how easy for them will it to be to kind of change from a side chain to an L2? Is that something that maybe somebody who's building something differently maybe has a faster shot at that, or do you think the L2s just kind of, or the side chains just kind of become L2s very quickly?
Yeah, so the benefit of CAT is you get better bridging. And so side chains can upgrade their bridging structure to be more secure. So instead of being multi-sig, you might actually have like a optimistic bridge. Maybe some trust minimized. Maybe it's a one of n kind of trust assumption, which is significantly better. And so that's one main advantage. You that in and of itself does not make you an L2.
Okay.
Most side chains will never be Bitcoin L2s because they have a separate token, separate consensus mechanism, separate nodes, separate finality. So it's like, yeah, you might have a wrapped Bitcoin on that chain, but you're not inheriting the full security of Bitcoin because you have separate nodes you're trusting for consensus, and there are just a bunch of trust assumptions baked into a side chain. That being said, could a side chain become a ZK rollup if they wanted to? And the answer is yes. You could tweak the architecture of your chain to be an L2. A really good example of this is Polygon. So Ethereum has, Polygon is basically a sidechain. It's an Ethereum sidechain. A lot of people have thought forever that it's an L2 on Ethereum, but it's not. It's an Ethereum sidechain. They have a separate set of validators. It's just a completely different chain. You have new trust assumptions. You're trusting new people. It's not Ethereum at all. It's a separate chain. Polygon has this Polygon 2.0 idea where they're actually going to become a true L2 on Ethereum. You can upgrade your validators. You can take all of your transactions and post them to Ethereum essentially with a proof. And now you've essentially eliminated any of the consensus that used to happen on Polygon, and now it happens on Ethereum. And so you can pivot from L1 or sidechain to a rollup if that's what you really want to do as a chain. And that's actually it's not a crazy thing to imagine. I imagine we'll see a lot more of that in the future.
Gotcha. Awesome.
I want to take it to another place real quick. So, we obviously cover all the meta protocols, the Bitcoin ecosystem altogether. And one of the big news headlines was that the TAP protocol had partnered with, I can't remember the project's name, but they're basically ICP technology to create this kind of bridge situation between TAP protocol and possibly EVM environments.
Yep.
Could you talk about your opinion on that and where you see that going?
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic example of, it's like the beginning of the cross-chain interoperability that I think we're going to see on Bitcoin over the next couple of years. So, them specifically leveraging ICP. If you don't know anything about ICP, you probably think it's a scam coin that, the price dumped like crazy and it's a worthless chain with terrible tech, and everyone's it's some
The,
kind
the
of
only thing that I've heard that you've mentioned from that was the price. There was people that were upset about the price, but from a tech perspective, I've heard it's a really solid chain for
yes.
tech.
Yep. Yeah. From a tech perspective, tech is really good. And so there are a couple of like protocol primitives that the TAP team is going to leverage in order to do this Bitcoin asset to Ethereum or EVM token path. One of them is ICP has a Bitcoin light node that runs fully on chain. So there's an Oracle. The Oracle pulls from, I don't know how many, 10 or 20 Bitcoin nodes, trusted Bitcoin nodes. And then it has a consensus process. And then it stores all of the light node data on chain. So you have all Bitcoin addresses, all of the UTXOs owned by the address, and their balance amount. You can get all of that without having to go off chain at all. So that's one nice thing. You can read Bitcoin directly on chain. Another really nice one that they have is it's called a threshold signature subnet. So if you don't know anything about ICP, ICP is a sharded blockchain. Sharded blockchain meaning there are a whole bunch of subnets that make up the blockchain. These subnets, I call them native subnets because they all use the same everything. They're kind of like separate blockchains because you only do consensus within your subnet, but they're very much not different blockchains because you can easily just communicate across subnets really, really easily. And so there's a threshold signing subnet. What this means is you can sign ECDSA signatures in this threshold fashion. So what that means is an ICP smart contract can hold Bitcoin in a Bitcoin address directly. You just spin up a Bitcoin address. You have all the smart contract functionality you want, and you can programmatically interact with that Bitcoin however you want. And so being able to sign directly, this threshold signature setup is similar to Wormhole. Wormhole uses this same kind of threshold signature setup, and there are lots of other kind of protocols leveraging these kind of threshold signatures. So that's one benefit is you can sign Bitcoin transactions directly from an ICP smart contract as well. So I could have a smart contract. You could escrow Bitcoin funds. You have all the programmability in the world to do whatever you want with that. And then you can actually create a Bitcoin transaction, sign the Bitcoin transaction, and broadcast it to the network, all from an ICP smart contract.
Why is that not being leveraged more? Because I feel like that's like, solves a lot of the hurdles that people are trying to, having to try to get over or innovate, around to eventually have some kind of smart contract functionality. But it seems like ICP already has that.
Right. So on the good side, we have awesome functionality. You have this direct Bitcoin integration. You have the threshold signatures, and that's all fantastic. Gives you a lot of programmability and scale. The thing that people don't like is you do add additional trust assumptions by leveraging this tech. So instead of just trusting, an honest majority of Bitcoin miners and or Bitcoin nodes, you're now trusting nodes in a subnet on ICP. Oftentimes multiple subnets. So you might be trusting, 20 to 30 to 50 nodes on ICP. And you're also trusting the on-chain governance of ICP. So ICP is really unique because it is governed by a DAO, meaning that the only way to upgrade the protocol is to submit a proposal to change it, and then everyone votes on it, and only if it passes does it get propagated out across the network. So like you can't just like one engineer can't just go to the back room and push an upgrade. Everything goes through this central governance. It is decentralized. There are a lot of different people that can vote. But that's the reason why people don't want to use ICP, is because there are some additional trust assumptions. I mean, just like with any sidechain, any sidechain that you use, which is almost every layer right now in Bitcoin, there are just some additional trust assumptions. But for us on Bioniq, it's been fantastic to build on ICP because of these protocol primitives. They just unlock so many things for us as an app building on Bitcoin. So yeah, pretty fantastic.
Yeah. And it's crazy too, because like a lot of people don't realize that like most of all the indexing for meta protocols are off chain, right? And so like they're trying to fight this battle that like to make things permissionless completely and decentralized, when like the indexing itself is happening off chain. And so like you have to trust that. So with that said, you know, if you don't mind, I want to pivot because I know we're getting close to on time here. And I was wondering what your opinions are for like these new sub meta protocols like Proto Runes. Then you have BRC 2.0. I guess we'll start with Proto Runes. If you could explain what that is and what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a step back for a second. A lot of these protocols are trying to add programmability to meta protocols. Adding programmability means one way to build a meta protocol is you define every single action that you can take. Deposit to liquidity pool, swap within liquidity pool, transfer, mint, deploy, batch transfer, airdrop. And that's one way to build a meta protocol, is you just build all the methods directly into the meta protocol. The downside is it's so rigid and it's not flexible, and you're likely still going to have to upgrade over time as people come up with new smart contract like functions that they want to add to the meta protocol. So instead of this, people are thinking through, well, how can we add a more generic programmability layer to these meta protocols? And so they're saying, well, you know, just take a EVM smart contract. This is the BRC 22.0 example. Take a EVM smart contract and inscribe it to Bitcoin as an ordinal. Then within your BRC 20 transaction, you can just say, I want to use a method from this smart contract and put the inscription ID, and I want to use the method, you know, deposit liquidity or whatever. And then you include your BRC 20 balance or whatever.
Recursion,
and
right? Because they'd be pointing to that inscription and utilizing the data from it to create this new functionality inscription, right?
Right. Yeah. You don't have to pull in the inscription. Recursion is generally when you have a pointer that actually like pulls it in. In this case, it's just like a text pointer. And then the indexer itself, when it reads that transaction, it says, okay, what's the inscription? Oh, I'm going to go grab the code. Let's pull the code in. This is all on the indexer side. Then we're going to execute that code on my BRC 20 balance, and then I'm going to have a resulting state. So it's basically, you can just upgrade your indexer to execute EVM smart contracts. And now you have the same trust assumptions. You know, you're still trusting these centralized indexers to behave. But you now have essentially unlimited programmability. Anyone can deploy a new smart contract with whatever methods they want that can directly apply to your BRC 20 balance. So that's the idea with BRC 22.0. And this is what Proto Runes is trying to do, just with runes. It's a little bit different though. BRC 20 is going to upgrade in place. So you have BRC 20, then you're going to just upgrade, and now it's BRC 22.0. All of your balances directly are upgraded. Everything can be used immediately. That's different than Proto Runes. Proto Runes is not going to be built into the runes protocol specifically. Like Casey is not going to add Proto Runes into the spec, at least as far as I know. And so because of that, it's a separate meta protocol. Being a separate meta protocol is a little bit complicated because you can't use programmability on runes natively. You have to go somewhere else. So either you burn your runes and go to Proto Runes, which right now is a one-way burn. You can't ever go back to runes. It's like if you've heard of a space chain, the space chain is the idea that you can bridge your Bitcoin to the chain and never bring it back. You send it off into space and it's gone. So risky for users because you're locked in forever to the new protocol. If you ever wanted to go back, you can't. That's how it would work right now. Another option in the future, I mean, there are a couple of other ways to make it better over time, but that's currently how it would work. So that's proto runes. It's not quite as seamless as BRC 22.0. Adds a couple hurdles because of this space chain concept, burning to mint proto runes. In the future, you could imagine an interoperability layer that lets you lock up runes to mint proto runes. In that case, you now have a two-way bridge. But it does require this kind of interoperability layer to pull it off. But that's basically what Proto Runes is doing. Proto Runes is adding a WASM-based execution environment, so you can execute WASM smart contracts. That's like assembly script, which is like JavaScript, or theoretically you could do Rust or Python or something like that. So that's what Proto Runes is doing.
With the proto runes, like after you get like, let's just say like 20% of the supply of that token, you could eventually just do trade-offs where as long as there's people that want to come on and people that want to get off, you could just kind of just do a trade-off, right? Instead of burning more, kind of like bridge.
You could do a swap of some kind.
Yeah.
The tricky thing about a swap is you have two different meta protocols, and there isn't. I mean, I guess as long as you had a runes indexer and a proto runes indexer, then you could do a PSBT swap. Yep.
Okay. That would actually open up a lot, but you would need like at least 20% of the supply to burned to do something like that. So
yeah,
and you might run into liquidity issues, or you might end up with a price difference.
Yeah. I feel like there's definitely more, obstacles in the way for the roto runes versus the BRC 2.0, since it's going to be updated directly on the meta protocol. If you were to pick one that would have success, what are you thinking?
My current mindset, I mean, this kind of goes back to, all of the like Bitcoin layer 0 ideas that I've been working on lately. I think everything is good. I think it's all good. Atomicals is good. Tap is good. Pipe is good. Runes is good. Proto runes is good. BRC 20 is good. BRC 22.0 is good. CBRC 20 is good. BRC 100 is good. Did I miss any of the key ones that are going to get mad at me? Everything else is good. So to me, it's less important who wins, and more important that we can interoperate between protocols on Bitcoin, because once you can easily move between runes and BRC20, it doesn't really matter what you do. If you start on runes, then that's great, or you can move to BRC20 and that's great. And I think it will matter more that, like, is this a Bitcoin asset, and how does it, just plug it into interoperability layer, and now you can do whatever you want with it. Even like counterparty, there's a part of me that thinks that counterparty assets are going to have a resurgence once they have interoperability with everything else. Once you can buy a rare Pepe from 2017 in a really easy way using PSBTs on an Ordinals marketplace, like, who isn't going to want to speculate on rare counterparty assets? Like, once you solve that interoperability problem, it feels like you open up a lot of opportunities for lots of protocols, lots of tokens to just, come and play, basically.
Yeah.
So,
dude, I love that. I love that, because that's been my vision the entire time. My vision, like, I'm Satoshi, no, but like I have seen that, like, because we don't have to do what Ethereum does. We're different, obviously, over here from the tech wise standpoint. But I mean, I'm just looking at the top ERC 20 market caps, right? Like, there's just the top 10. Obviously, the top ones are going to be the stable tokens, but 100 billion and up. And down a little bit, but then you get to like Shiba at number 5, 10 billion, Chainlink 8 billion, Uniswap 8 billion, Polygon 5 billion. So my point is even with all these layer 2s, I think with the multi-meta protocol ecosystem over here, we can have liquidity grow, especially with TradFi slowly but surely coming over. So that's my perspective on it, and I'm glad we kind of share that similar perspective with that.
Yep.
I kind of want to jump into what you're working on now. You're working on something pretty awesome. It has something to do with kind of like a Bitcoin layer 0 type of project. I wonder if you can get into that a little bit.
Yeah. So, the vision for these interoperability protocols, at least my vision for like this interoperability hub, is take any asset not on Bitcoin and make it a Bitcoin asset. I think that's pretty straightforward. Bring an Ethereum token and make it a Runes token. Bring a Solana token and make it a BRC20. Take a base token or a Blast token and bring it over to Bitcoin. In the same vein, you should be able to take a BRC20 and you should be able to take it to Solana as a token. You should be able to take a Runes token and take it to base. And I also think that if you think about like the Bitcoin native asset layer, you should be able to take a BRC20 and just go directly to a Rune or something like that. You don't want to have to go through Solana or go through Ethereum or something like that. And so, maybe some kind of like, middle chain layer where you can do easy Bitcoin based swaps. Something like this feels very needed in the space. And I'm very excited about it. I mean, if you've been following my Twitter over the last 18 months, I was born to build a Bitcoin layer 0. Like I've been diving into all these meta protocols, side chains, rollups, layer 2s since the beginning, and it's interesting to me. It's fascinating. There's a million ways people are trying to do things, and let's just bring it all together. And so not a lot to announce from my side right now, but very, very excited about this future specifically for Bitcoin.
Amazing. And will you be using like ICP type of technology for this, or would you it's just naturally just Bitcoin based Bitcoin?
There are a lot of different options on the tech,
Okay.
and we're exploring all of the options. Right now, you're basically doing either a multi-sig or some kind of threshold setup, or something a little bit more complicated, like maybe BitVM2. Once we get CAT, then you can do CAT VM type stuff. And so, the bridging is always kind of a work in progress. But our goal is to essentially just make 10 out of 10 user experience. Make it fantastic, make it really easy to move your assets around, make everything just fluid. And the tech, regardless of what we use on the tech side, it's going to be iteratively improving over time as we upgrade Bitcoin. So yeah.
I love it. It's awesome. I want to jump back to Tap real quick because once we heard the Benny come out and say that they're doing they're working with ICP, me and Yagubi right away we're like Bob Bodily, right? We know you have some, they have at least called you, had a phone call with you, something with you. Could you tell us anything about that, or maybe even like how the process even happened?
I don't actually know many of the inside details on that.
Okay.
I know from what I've heard and talking to Benny, he is a very pragmatic developer, very sharp, very smart, and very interested in just using good tech that works. And so moving from something like Bitcoin with a very limited kind of smart contract layer with Bitcoin script, going to something like an EVM chain, I think ICP is a fantastic choice. You have the threshold signatures. You can do oracles directly on ICP. You have the Bitcoin Light node. Like, it has all of the protocol primitives you need to really easily build this Bitcoin to Ethereum bridge. And so the partnership doesn't surprise me. Makes a ton of sense that Benny would want to leverage good tech when he finds it. And I mean, he's just gonna keep cranking. So very, very excited about Tap and everything happening on the track side.
So, in your opinion, because obviously you probably don't know, but is this like an upgrade for Tap, or is this like going to be like something else they're doing?
I don't think it's an upgrade to the protocol. I think you can just lock up your Tap tokens and then mint them on any. I mean, technically any EVM chain. Like, you could go to any EVM chain. They might start with one, but that's the idea. You're basically building a two-way bridge with your Tap tokens to an EVM chain.
Gotcha. So they're really just doing it for the bridging aspect of it, and to get into the EVM environment.
You have to lock up your Bitcoin assets somewhere.
Okay.
And then you have to be able to prove that you've locked those assets up and trigger a mint action on the EVM chain. And so the nice thing about ICP is you can do all of this in an ICP smart contract. With ECDSA signatures, you can sign Ethereum transactions. And so, and with their Oracle functionality, you can just monitor the state, whether it's Bitcoin state or Ethereum state. And so you essentially enable two-way bridging directly from just a single ICP smart contract. And so it just makes sense. So yeah, pretty excited about it.
Gotcha. You have any more questions, Yago?
No, I think it was an amazing conversation. Really, really appreciate you answering all of our 1 billion questions, but I feel like I'm definitely a lot more knowledgeable now. So we appreciate that.
Is there anything that you maybe wanted to hit on that we didn't hit on?
I mean, I don't know. We covered quite a bit today, so no. I mean, I'm feeling pretty good about it. This was a really fun conversation. I know we got a little bit in the weeds occasionally, but hopefully we kept it pretty approachable for the mainstream Bitcoin Ordinals audience.
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I understood everything, which is very rare. So, amazing conversation.
I think it shows like how much time can change. Because I remember last time we had the initial interview with you, I was like super nervous because I was like, this guy's like so smart. I'm about to, but like seriously, just diving in each and every day because it's part of what we do now. It just educates you and it makes me think about like how many things I could have been like more proficient at if I was just reading on it every day. So I don't know. Might try to go to med school now. No, I'm just kidding.
And major props to both of you. We had some really kind of in-depth conversations today, and you guys were on point. Like, super awesome insights, questions, follow-up questions. Really, really fun conversation. We're gonna have to do this again sometime. So
definitely, dude, anytime. We love this. So this is kind of the part of the show where we kind of give you the stage to talk to our audience. You can use that for anything you want. The stage is yours.
Cool. I would probably say definitely check out Bioniq. As kind of an omni-chain Bitcoin NFT marketplace. We do a lot of unique things over there with Ordinals. We have some really interesting improvements coming in the next couple of weeks. And we're really excited about all of that. We're finally going to get, pretty close marketplace parity with, some of the leading NFT marketplaces in the space. We have a really unique launchpad concept coming for Ordinals. If you think about Ordinals launchpads, you have the permissioned ones where the team basically says, yeah, you can launch or no, you can't. And that's frustrating for a lot of people. Then you have the open launchpads, which are really nice, except from a buyer perspective, it's just really hard to know what to buy. I mean, you go on the homepage and there's like a million things, launching, and it's hard to make buying decisions. And so we are creating a community-fueled launchpad idea. So as users interact on Bioniq, they earn reputation. They'll then vote with that reputation on who they want to launch. And the more Bitcoin you're trying to raise, the more support you need from the community to launch. And so, you're only ever going to launch a massive collection if everyone loves you and wants you to launch. And so it's kind of a balance between these two extremes, where now we have an interesting way for community. It's kind of like a decentralized community fueled launchpad. So, we're really excited about that idea. Almost finished with testing there. And then, we're doing things on the dynamic ordinal side, or like staking game side for Ordinals. We really want people to just do more with your Ordinals. Think staking, think, earning tokens, think staking games, think like, Wolf Game or other kinds of staking games. Like, let's bring all of that to Ordinals in a way that's really easy to use and spin up for existing Ordinals collections. So tons happening on the Bioniq side that I'm very excited about. And then, we're definitely pushing into this Bitcoin Layer 0 idea as well that I'm also excited about. So lots coming down the pipeline.
I love it, man. Thank you so much for coming on, man. We can't wait to do it again. Definitely very soon. And we'll see you next time.
Cool. Thank you.
See you, Bob.
Talk soon.
Absolutely amazing, man. Always appreciate him coming on. One of the smartest people in the space. Like I said in the beginning of the show, man, I learned so much in this episode. Definitely, I learned. My biggest thing was I was thinking that OPCAT was a hard fork, but being a soft fork, that changes everything for me, and especially with it being really tested now. That's huge, and that's really opened my eyes to a lot. And I'm actually really bullish now on OPCAT for sure.
Yeah, and I think one thing that today's show or episode will possibly change the perception of some people that know how Bitcoin works and stuff is that we don't need to like fully lean in and rely on like these opcodes only, right? Like, so creating something like this layer 0 that Bob and his team is looking to do is like, we need to do that anyways, I feel like, right? And OPCAT can just make that building on these meta protocols just much easier and more interesting. Because I really do think like our ecosystem over here is going to look completely different in like 5-10 years compared to like the Ethereum ecosystem. They're just different chains. They're, UTXO model versus, whatever Ethereum uses, Solidity language, however that blockchain works. But it's completely different. So I think that, focusing on the right things is what we need to do. And that seems to be what's happening right now. So I just feel lucky to be here during this time of innovations. Like he said, Bitcoin Renaissance period is exactly the best way to put it.
Yeah, man, we're in the room of innovation right now. Being in Bitcoin is absolutely amazing. All right, guys, that's our show for you guys today. Go check out our partners, Ordinal Hive, Fluid Tokens, Rotium Dex, and Traverse Labs. Check them out and check out OrdinalRevolution.com. We have some of the best articles, and we have at Ordinal. You can get your Ordinal gear there. But that's a show. We'll see you all week. We're live Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Pacific. So check us out all week live, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Ordinal Revolution. Let's go.